At this time, I want to have Doug Herman come up and join me up here. Doug, come on up. Doug is an executive board member of IDA, and he's going to share his personal story with us right now.
Thank you. Behind every face, there's a story. You agree? The question is, do you know the stories of the people sitting around you tonight? You may know the preface, you may know a piece of it. Do you know the stories of people that you meet every day? And the question is also, will you invite them into your story? And sometimes more importantly, are you willing to jump into their chapter, into their book, and be a part of their story? In 1980, I graduated from school in Nebraska, so I am cursed as a Husker fan. And married my high school sweetheart, Yvonne, and after hanging garage doors for 3 years for my dad, we felt like we should be involved in ministry. So I went to Texas to go to a Bible college, learned to be a pastor. While there, my wife, Yvonne, gave birth to our little boy, Josh. And after delivery, hemorrhaged a little bit. She got some transfusions. She seemed fine. This was February 19th, 1985. 2 years later, we discovered through the hospital that one of the units of blood given to my wife was infected with a virus called HTLV3. We know it as HIV today. There was no testing back then during the transfusion, so we were kind of up in the air. I was at risk. It wasn't long after that we discovered we had conceived a second child. Moved to Colorado. And in November 1988, my little girl, Ashley Nicole Herman, was born. She was the 7th AIDS baby in the state of Colorado. Children's Hospital back then did not have a HIV clinic. They didn't have any pediatric AIDS trials. They had an oncology ward. They had a burn unit. That's where we stayed most of the time. They had amazing nurses. And I got to tell you that we were involved in the development of the HIV clinic as they were building. I remember conversations with Dr. Mark Abzug, with Dr. Betsy McFarland. It was an amazing time to see people really, truly care and join our story. The church I was working at was really struggling. They didn't know how to deal with a staff member whose family had HIV. The short of it is they asked us to leave. 3 months after the church asked us to leave, my little girl Ashley, at 2 years and 2 months of age, had fought all she could fight. I stood by her side, shut life support off. That was a hard day in my story. 8 months after that, my wife Yvonne, 27 years old, also battling HIV. I was 28. Stood by her side at Lutheran Medical Center, shut life support off on my wife. It was just a hard year. In the midst of that, you have to have income. How are you going to make money? A school I was working at, Chatfield High School, I was coaching wrestling part-time, said, "Doug, would you share your story with our teenagers?" I said, "Sure, I don't know why, but I'll try." I shared the story of Ashley. I told about her infection, told about what this disease does, how it works, how you can get it. And that was horrible. It was the worst thing you'd ever heard. I just cried like a baby, and I said, "This is what happened," and she died. And I said, "It's horrible." I said, "Don't get this disease." And his kids are like, "Okay, we won't." And I said, "Okay, I'm done. We're out of here." It was the worst speaker you'd ever heard in your life. It was horrible. But the school liked it, and they had us come back, and I started doing more presentations and more school assemblies. This was 1991. And 2 years ago, 2007, I quit traveling and speaking. I've done over 3,500 public school, all school assemblies across the United States, North America, and around the world. And I've had a lot of fun talking to people about their story. See, it's not about my story, and that's what I want to get across tonight. When I spoke to students all across this globe and families, I said, look, it's about your story. It's about how your story, what tomorrow's page means in your life story. See, 2 years after my wife passed away, I had this great opportunity to marry someone. Her name is Stephanie. She's sitting right back there. Yeah, she's a really attractive one that Wes is pointing out. Wes is Wayne's brother. But she and I were married several years ago. We have 2 little kids now that have grown up. Brianna is 15. She cheers for Chatfield High School. They throw her in the air and scare us. So she's 15. My son Luke is 12. We just adopted last year from China a little girl named Kate. So our family is really diverse. I know I have a 24-year-old son now. Josh is in LA, and 15, 12, and 2-year-old. We're phenomenal at cocktail parties. The reason I tell you that is this. My father died from brain cancer earlier this year, and And when he passed away, I was inspired by his life because he was involved in so many boards and so many organizations, and I just felt like I'd been lazy. Hadn't really stepped into too many people's life stories and haven't opened myself up to allow people into mine. And so I told God, Lord, first person to ask me to join their board, I'll do it. That week, Wayne calls me on the phone, hey, this is Wayne Cannell, remember me? Of course. Halfway through, I think I cut you off. I'm like, yes, I'll do it. There's no question, I'll do it. So I've been here for a couple months with IDA, but it's important to me because not just having a family with HIV that people can't see because they look good. She went to church. They said the exact same thing they've said to you, Sherry. You look so good, Yvonne. You look so good. But you're struggling with stuff and how you feel. My wife, Stephanie, her mother passed away a couple years ago from a variety of diseases, but basically celiac sprue disease, having a gluten intolerance, misdiagnosed for over 30 years. When they finally figured it out, her intestinal lining was like glass. She couldn't digest the nutrition that they would give her. And how in America, with the best medicine in the globe, how does someone die of starvation in our country? Well, it happens. People don't want to believe that it's real. Psychosomatic. So the question is, are you willing to believe someone, and are you willing to step into their story, and are you willing to invite them into your life story? My wife, Stephanie, my two kids, Brianna and Lucas, all have celiac sprue disease. We eat well. But we have to go to every school, every restaurant. Schools don't really want to work with. They try to work with my kids, but they don't. The teacher had my daughter bring in some extra snacks so that when in home ec cooking, she could have her own snacks, and the kids, and they tried to work it out, but the teacher ate my daughter's snacks one day, and my daughter comes back, and they were gone, so she didn't have anything to eat, and the teacher said, oh, those were really good. Yeah, you're an idiot. But I guess I'm sharing my story for one major reason. And my little boy who's 12 with his diabetes that we wrestle with, and the pump that he's on, the clinical trials, but behind every face there's a story. And it's really easy to come to a fundraising event, and I've done a lot of them, I've spoken a lot. And to do a silent auction, which more people need to do. To do the live auction, which you're going to do, and you're going to pay ridiculous prices for silly stuff. It's one thing to do that, but it's another thing to open your life up and it's invite people into your life story and be a little vulnerable and let them see who you really are. And to be a person who's willing to be a character in somebody else's life story, when they invite you and they tell you what's going on, that you believe their story enough to be invited into those pages. So what I want to challenge you with tonight is, look, open up your life. Let people read who you really are. And when someone shares their story with you tonight, believe it and be willing to join them there. Thanks.